My parents never wanted daughters, they wanted rivals. From the moment my sister Claire and I could talk, they pitted us against each other. Grades, looks, friends, even our boyfriends. If I won an award, they'd ask why Claire didn't. If she failed a test, they blamed me. I was the ice queen, she was the sensitive one. But the truth? We were just two little girls used as pawns in their twisted power game. And the worst part? We believed them. For years. Until one day, everything snapped. Have you ever been blamed for someone else's pain, just because it was easier for them? If stories like this resonate, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more emotional family revenge stories. Every voice matters. Let's heal together. My name is Hailey. I'm 32 now, a licensed psychologist. People say I help others make peace with their past. But what they don't know is that I've spent my entire life running from mine. I grew up in a pristine 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind that looks picture perfect from the outside. But inside, it was a battlefield. My parents weren't abusive in the way people expect. There were no bruises, no shouting matches that neighbors overheard. Just silence, manipulation, and subtle cruelty. They were the kind of toxic parents who wore smiles at church and handed out compliments like weapons. Everything was a competition, and my only opponent was Claire. Claire was my younger sister by 2 years. She was sweet, emotional, artistic. I was the strong one, straight A student, captain of the debate team, the girl who always kept it together. And yet, nothing I ever did was enough. When I made honor roll, my mom asked why I didn't place first. When Claire cried because her drawing didn't win at school, Dad said, "Well, your sister's good at winning. Maybe you should try being like her." But when Claire got her heart broken, they blamed me for making her feel insecure. It didn't take long for resentment to grow, not between me and them, but between me and Claire. We stopped sharing clothes, then secrets, then eye contact. By the time I was 16, we barely spoke unless it was to throw blame. And that's exactly how our parents liked it, because as long as we were busy resenting each other, we never questioned them, never united against the real enemy. The turning point came during our senior year. Claire had a breakdown. She stopped eating, locked herself in her room, and one night took a handful of pills. She survived, but barely. I remember sitting in the hospital with my parents whispering, "You've always pushed her too hard, Hailey." I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked out and never came back. At 18, I cut ties. No calls, no holidays. I put myself through college with scholarships, got into a top grad school, and built a new life in another state. One where I wasn't Hailey, the cold big sister. I was just Dr. Hailey Wren, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who thought she'd buried her past. But then Claire showed up in my office. She was 28 now, thin, quiet, eyes full of ghosts. She didn't recognize me, not after 12 years. And I didn't correct her. She gave me a fake name at first, a coping tactic I know all too well. Said she had trouble trusting people, trouble sleeping, flashbacks of her childhood. She told me about our parents, about the mind games, the gaslighting, the guilt. She told me everything I already knew, but this time from her voice. Each session cracked something open inside me. Rage, guilt, regret, but also clarity. For the first time, I saw Claire not as the enemy, but as another survivor. Still, I had a choice to make. Do I tell her who I really am, or do I use my knowledge, the years I've spent studying manipulation and trauma, to help her heal, and maybe even take back the power our parents stole from us both? Because one thing's for sure, you don't grow up with toxic parents and come out clean, but you can come out stronger. You just have to learn how to fight differently, and for me, that fight was just beginning. For weeks, I kept my identity hidden. I told myself it was the ethical thing to do, that it was best for Claire's healing. But deep down, I knew I was afraid. Afraid that if she recognized me, she'd walk out of my office and never come back. Afraid she'd still see me as the villain our toxic parents made me out to be. Session after session, she unraveled her trauma. Each story was like reliving my own, but nothing prepared me for what she brought in one rainy Thursday afternoon. Claire walked in holding a leather-bound journal. She looked shaken. "I found this in Dad's attic," she said, voice trembling. "I wasn't even looking for it, just trying to clean out some boxes for the estate attorney." My breath hitched. Our father had died 3 weeks earlier. I hadn't gone to the funeral. "I think it was Mom's," she added, placing the journal in my hands. You should read it." I waited until she left that day. Then I opened it. The first few pages were harmless, budget notes, grocery lists. But around page 20, everything changed. There it was, written in neat cursive. "Claire has always been more fragile, easier to control. Hailey fights too much, must keep them apart or they'll both turn on us. Praise Claire in public, punish Hailey in private. Balance of power is key. If Claire ever finds out the truth about prom night, blame Hailey." I froze. Prom night. That was the night Claire's boyfriend broke up with her out of nowhere. She'd cried for days, accusing me of flirting with him behind her back. Our parents had accidentally left Claire's diary open on the kitchen counter that same week. A diary that said she didn't feel pretty, that she envied me. They claimed it was an accident. I believed them. Claire believed me. But it wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated. Every single fracture in our sisterhood was engineered. And now I had proof. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I walked into the office, hands trembling, and looked at Claire not as a patient, not even as a sister, but as a victim of the same system that nearly destroyed me. And then she said it. "They told me you never loved me." She didn't even look up. "They said you called me weak, that you laughed at my breakdown, that you told them I was just pretending to be sick for attention." My heart shattered. I wanted to scream that none of it was true, that they were monsters who'd used our love for each other like a knife. But something stopped me. Instead, I reached for the journal. I placed it in her lap. "Read page 23, I whispered. She stared at me, confused, suspicious. Then she opened the book. She didn't cry. She shook. She shook like someone whose reality was cracking in real time. And inside that rupture, something fierce began to grow. I saw it bloom behind her eyes, rage, grief, and the need for justice. She looked up, eyes brimming, voice cold. "They used us." I nodded. "And I let them," she said, as if confessing a sin. "No," I replied, gently but firmly. "They trained us. That's what toxic parents do. They manipulate, divide, and conquer. They teach you that love has to be earned and pain has to be hidden. But we're not their puppets anymore." That was the moment Claire changed. Her spine straightened. Her tone shifted. "What else don't I know?" she asked. I hesitated, but I knew she deserved the truth. "I'm not just your therapist, Claire. I'm Hailey." Silence. Her mouth parted, but no words came out. Her eyes darted, searching my face, looking for the lie, but she found only truth. "I didn't recognize you," she whispered. "I didn't expect you to. I changed everything. Name, hair, city. I needed to survive." She leaned back, processing it all. "So, what now?" That was the question, wasn't it? I could have left it at healing. Let her journal it out, find closure, move on. But that wasn't enough. Toxic parents don't just disappear when they die. Their damage lingers. In estate papers, in false narratives, in the silence between siblings who were made enemies. And I was done letting their legacy live on. "Now," I said, "we tell the truth. We take back everything they twisted. Our voices, our names, even the damn family will." Her eyes narrowed. "You mean the one that left everything to the more obedient daughter?" I nodded. "I want to contest it," she said. "Expose them, even if they're not alive to see it." A slow, dangerous smile formed on my lips. "Then we do it together." In that moment, we weren't rivals. We weren't enemies. We were survivors, strategists, sisters reborn in the ashes of a toxic family legacy. And this time, the revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be legal, precise, and public. Because the war our parents started wasn't over. It was just beginning. And now, both of their daughters were on the same side. The day Claire and I decided to fight back was the day we became sisters again, but this wasn't going to be a screaming match in front of a tombstone. No, if we were going to expose the truth, it had to be cold, calculated, and permanent. Our toxic parents had built an entire legacy on lies. Social status, money, public image. Even in death, they were manipulating from the grave. My father's will left everything to Claire. Not out of love, but control. It was his final move in the game. Reward the obedient daughter, punish the defiant one. But now Claire knew the truth, and she was done being their pawn. We started by gathering evidence, not just emotional testimony, but cold, legal proof of manipulation. That journal was our cornerstone, but we needed more. "Let's go back," Claire said. "To the house, to their files." The house had been sitting empty since the funeral. Claire still had keys. Walking back into that place felt like stepping into a perfectly preserved crime scene, one filled with smiling family portraits that hid decades of psychological warfare. In the study, we found boxes of old records, therapy invoices, none of which were ever paid, emails between our father and his lawyer, even a draft of a different will, one that split the estate 50-50, dated only a year before his death. It was unsigned. "Guess he changed his mind," Claire muttered bitterly. "No," I said. "Someone convinced him to." In a hidden drawer, I found letters from my mother to my father, written after I left home. In one, she wrote, "If Hailey wants to disappear, let her. Claire's easier to mold. She craves our approval. We use that." Use that. She didn't even try to hide it. We scanned everything, every note, every document, every manipulative word. Then came the hard part, telling the lawyer. We met with a probate attorney in town, one I trusted from past cases. We laid out the evidence, including the journal and the abandoned will. The attorney raised an eyebrow. "You're trying to contest a legally binding will based on emotional abuse," he said. "That's hard to prove." Claire leaned forward, her voice steady. "It's not just emotional abuse. It's coercion, gaslighting, long-term psychological conditioning. They manipulated their own daughter into thinking she had to earn their love by turning on her sister. That's not family. That's a setup." He flipped through the journal. His expression changed. This might be enough to raise suspicion. At the very least, we can request a formal investigation into undue influence. If the court sees this as an intentional attempt to alienate an heir, we might have a case. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a start. We filed the motion within the week. Claire signed the affidavit. I provided a statement as a psychological expert, anonymously at first, to avoid any perceived conflict of interest. But exposing our toxic parents to the legal system was only part one. We needed people to see what they'd done, because for years, everyone thought they were the perfect family. My parents hosted charity events, mentored young couples, even gave lectures at parenting workshops. So Claire and I recorded a podcast episode together, anonymously, for a trauma-focused series I consulted for. We told our story, two sisters divided by design, reuniting through pain and standing up for the truth. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages poured in. "Your story is mine. My parents did this too. I thought I was crazy." That's when Claire turned to me and said, "I don't want to hide anymore." It was her choice, and it was brave. She posted the truth, publicly in her own words, on social media, her story, her voice. No blame, no vengeance, just clarity. She wrote, "They made me compete with my sister to earn love. It worked, until we discovered the truth. Now we stand together. We don't want sympathy. We want to break the cycle. For anyone out there raised by toxic parents, you're not alone." The post went viral, and suddenly, The narrative my parents worked decades to preserve cracked open. Old friends started reaching out, some apologizing, others sharing their own memories. Even my aunt, who had been estranged from the family for years, messaged me. I always knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how deep it went. For the first time in our lives, Claire and I weren't trapped inside our family's secrets. We were reclaiming them, piece by piece. But this was just the beginning, because the court date was coming, and our toxic parents weren't going to rest in peace, not until we buried the lies they left behind. 3 weeks after we filed the motion to contest the will, we received the first response from the estate's legal team. It was brutal. They accused Claire of being emotionally unstable, said she was trying to rewrite history for personal gain, claimed I was manipulating her with pseudo-therapeutic influence. They even included a character witness letter from my mother's lifelong best friend. She always said Claire was fragile, the woman wrote. Hailey leaving was the best thing for the family. She was cold, distant, cruel. Claire nearly threw the letter across the room. They're still playing the same game, she said through gritted teeth. Still trying to make you the villain and me the broken doll. I nodded. Then we hit harder. We compiled more evidence. Old voicemails from my mother berating me for trying to poison Claire's mind. Screenshots of texts where she guilted Claire for visiting an old college friend instead of calling home. A video clip from one of their parenting workshops where my father literally said, "Sometimes to raise strong daughters, you must break their illusions early." We presented all of it, and then we made it public. Claire was invited to speak on a mental health panel about sibling estrangement. She told her story live with thousands watching online, not as a victim, but as a survivor reclaiming her voice. I was raised by toxic parents who taught me to hate my sister, she said, but she saved me by telling me the truth. And now I'm saving myself. The video spread fast, and it rattled the people who once praised our parents as role models. The backlash started small. A few awkward calls from family friends, asking if what Claire said was really necessary. Then came the legal team. They filed a motion to silence the ongoing media discussions, citing emotional distress to the family's reputation. The irony was laughable. Claire responded with one sentence in court. Truth isn't defamation. But the biggest blow came from an unexpected place. A second cousin reached out, someone we barely knew, and sent us scans of letters our mother had written to her over the years. They were dripping with manipulation. Hailey always thought she was smarter than us. Claire's loyalty is her only virtue, and I intend to protect it at all costs. 2 daughters, 1 crown. Hailey can't accept that she lost. We submitted the letters. The court took notice. Patterns of manipulation, clear bias, strategic alienation. The judge officially allowed the case to proceed to formal hearing. It was happening. All their careful lies, the facade of unity, the roles they forced on us, were unraveling. And the people they fooled for decades? They started whispering, then questioning, then turning. One of my mother's closest friends sent Claire a message. "I believed her over you. I was wrong, I see that now." I'm sorry. But what hit hardest was a letter Claire received in the mail. No return address. Just 3 words on the envelope, from Dad's desk. Inside was a handwritten note, sloppy, desperate, likely written before his death. "If you ever find this, know that I was afraid. Of you girls realizing what we'd done, of losing control. I thought splitting you would keep the peace. But I think I only created war." Claire read it, folded it, burned it. "No more apologies from ghosts," she said. Our toxic parents had tried to control the narrative even after death. But now, their daughters were the ones holding the pen. Watching Claire burn that letter felt like justice in slow motion. No more whispers, no more secrets. Just truth, rising from the ashes. If that moment hit you as hard as it hit us, like this video, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful family revenge stories. Courtrooms aren't like what you see on TV. There's no dramatic music, no gasps from the gallery. Just silence, paper shuffling, tension you can taste. But for Claire and me, this courtroom was a battlefield. And we had spent months preparing for war. The judge had granted a full evidentiary hearing. Our claim that the final version of our father's will had been influenced by long-term emotional manipulation and coercion, the kind that toxic parents weaponize not with fists, but with fear, shame, and silence. We knew it would be an uphill battle. Emotional abuse rarely leaves paper trails. But what it does leave is patterns, and we had plenty of those. Claire was nervous. I could see it in the way she kept tapping her pen. Her jaw clenched so tight it trembled. "I can't believe we're doing this," she whispered. "We're not just doing this for us," I reminded her. "We're doing it for the little girls they tried to turn into enemies." We had spent weeks working with our attorney, crafting a narrative built not on emotion, but evidence. The journal, the letters, the voicemails, the old draft of the fair will, the character statements, and most importantly, Claire's voice, finally free and unfiltered. The opposing legal team, the estate's original executors, fought back hard. They tried to discredit me as a therapist, accusing me of bias and conflict of interest. They painted Claire as mentally unstable, emotionally fragile, and easily manipulated by her estranged sister's agenda. But their arguments lacked truth. They had polished language, cold legalese. But we had facts and lived experience, and the courage to stand in the wreckage of our past without flinching. The night before the hearing, Claire and I sat in her apartment, sifting through the last batch of exhibits. She found an old photo tucked inside her notebook, one from when we were little. She and I sitting on the same swing set. She was laughing. I was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. "I don't remember this day," she whispered. "That's because they buried it," I said. "They replaced our real memories with their lies." She looked at me, not as the sister she'd hated, but as the one who never stopped loving her. "No matter what happens in court," she said, "they don't win. Not anymore." And she was right. The next morning, we walked into that courtroom not as victims, but as survivors prepared to expose the decades of manipulation our toxic parents had buried under charm and control. The room was small, no cameras, just a few family members, a stone-faced judge, and two women standing shoulder to shoulder against the weight of a legacy that had nearly destroyed them. The bailiff called order. The hearing began. And with the first witness on the stand, the walls of the past began to crack. Claire took the stand first. She sat upright, hands folded, voice calm, but every word she spoke cut like a blade. "My parents didn't raise me and my sister. They engineered us," she began. "Every compliment came with a comparison. Every mistake became a weapon, and they used those weapons to turn me against the only person who ever truly cared about me." She paused, eyes flicking to me. I nodded. "Keep going." "They told me Hailey was cold, that she hated me, that she wanted to steal everything from me, friends, success, even love. So I believed them. I turned on her. I blamed her when I should have blamed them." The opposing lawyer rose. "Ms. Bennett, would you describe yourself as emotionally unstable?" She didn't blink. "I used to be, but now I see the truth, and I have every right to speak it." Next, our attorney brought out the journal. The courtroom hushed as she read excerpts aloud. "Hailey is too strong. Claire is easier to mold. Keep them apart. It's safer that way. Divide and maintain control." Even the judge's face shifted, from impartial detachment to visible discomfort. Then came the bombshell. "Your Honor," our attorney said, "we submit a handwritten letter, dated 6 months before Mr. Bennett's death, in which he admits to fearing the consequences of the manipulation he and his wife carried out for decades. We believe this shows not only consciousness of guilt, but intent to deceive both daughters and the court." The estate's lawyer objected. "Hearsay, no signature, no confirmation of authenticity." But Claire stood. "That's his handwriting. I've seen it my whole life. on birthday cards, report cards, notes in my locker. I know his voice. I know his guilt. The judge allowed the letter into consideration. Then, it was my turn. I wasn't just Hailey the sister anymore. I was Dr. Hailey Wren, licensed trauma specialist. I spoke not only as a survivor, but as a professional trained to recognize toxic parent behavior. I've spent the last decade counseling families through the same patterns I lived through. Coercive control, enmeshment, sibling triangulation. What happened to Claire and me isn't rare. It's textbook. But unlike most of my clients, I have documentation, evidence, names. I turned to the judge. Our parents built their legacy on emotional manipulation, and they used that manipulation to craft a will that rewarded obedience and punished resistance. That's not just unjust, it's abuse from beyond the grave. Silence filled the room. Then, for the first time since the hearing began, the judge spoke directly to us. I see a clear, consistent pattern of emotional coercion and psychological division. This court has a duty not only to honor the law, but to correct injustice when presented with sufficient evidence. His gavel hit the bench. The motion to contest the will is granted. The estate will be divided equally between the two rightful heirs. Claire gasped. I exhaled. We didn't cheer. We didn't cry. We just looked at each other. Not as pawns in a game, but as sisters who had finally shattered the board. The courtroom victory didn't erase the past, but it redrew the lines of our future. For the first time in over a decade, I wasn't Hailey the runaway, the ice queen, or the scapegoat of my toxic parents' carefully constructed narrative. I was simply me, a woman who had faced the ghosts of her childhood and walked out with her head high. Claire and I met at the estate one last time. The house felt hollow. The same walls that once pulsed with tension now just echoed with silence. We walked through the rooms, not out of sentiment, but closure. This place always smelled like lemon polish and secrets, Claire muttered. I smiled. Let's make sure the secrets are the only thing that stays buried. We donated most of their possessions. The furniture, the books, even the portrait in the foyer that had once symbolized their image of perfection. It felt strangely satisfying watching that oil-painted lie get wrapped in newspaper and carted off. We kept only a few things. Claire took the piano key necklace Mom once used to guilt her into practicing for hours. I kept the copy of the unsigned will tucked into my journal. Not as trophies, but as reminders. Never again. As part of the court's ruling, the estate executor was ordered to release a public statement acknowledging the will's amendment due to psychological coercion and emotional misconduct. No flowery language, no hiding, just the raw truth, in legal ink. That mattered more than the money. Our toxic parents were gone, but their story, the one they tried to script for us, had been rewritten. By us. I returned to my practice 2 weeks later. My first session was with a teenage girl battling anxiety rooted in parental shame. She said, "Sometimes I feel like I have to choose between being good and being me." I looked at her and said, "You don't have to choose. You're allowed to be both, especially when being good was defined by people who never deserved that power." I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. I might not have believed it, but now I did, fully. Because I knew what it meant to reclaim the definition of love, family, and self. Claire, meanwhile, applied for a graduate program in social work. She wanted to specialize in trauma recovery. "Not everyone gets to turn pain into purpose," she told me. "I want to help others before they forget who they really are." She also set boundaries, hard ones. Aunts and uncles who once stayed silent tried to reconnect. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She simply said, "If you didn't protect us then, you don't get access to us now." That's the thing about healing from toxic parents. It doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like peace with no invitation back. For us, it looked like truth, spoken loudly, and silence, chosen deliberately. We were no longer daughters trying to prove ourselves. We were women who had nothing left to prove, and that was the end of their control. A few months after the hearing, I found myself sitting alone on the same swing set from that old childhood photo, the one Claire had shown me before the trial. It was rusted now, the paint chipped, the chains creaking in the breeze. But somehow, it felt sacred. I let myself remember the tiny, innocent moments. The first time Claire scraped her knee and I carried her inside. The time she made me a bracelet out of yarn and said, "Now we match forever." And then, the silence, the accusations, the years of distance that weren't our fault, but still left real scars. It's strange, healing. People think it's a finish line, a "we're better now" declaration. But for me, it's more like learning to walk again, on different ground, softer, wiser, no longer trying to earn love from the people who built their version of it on control. Because that's the legacy of toxic parents. They plant seeds of doubt in your soul and call it structure. They break you in half and say it's discipline. Yeah. And worst of all, they turn love into a competition, a scoreboard you never agreed to join. But we stopped playing. Claire and I still go to therapy, separately and together. We're rebuilding, brick by brick. Not just as sisters, but as individuals who were never allowed to be individuals before. One day, she said to me, "It wasn't just that they divided us. It's that they convinced us we liked it." I nodded, understanding too well. Yeah, they made survival feel like success. There's no perfect ending, no ribbon-wrapped reconciliation. Some wounds still sting when touched. Some memories still show up uninvited. But we've learned how to face them, not with fear, but with choice. I chose to stay in my field. I still help patients, many of whom come from families just like ours. And when they say, "I think I'm the problem," I tell them the same thing I once had to tell myself. You are not broken. You were taught to see yourself that way, but you can learn again. Claire recently started a blog. Her first post was titled, "My parents raised me to compete. My sister taught me to heal." It went viral. I cried reading it, not because it was perfect, but because it was hers. Unfiltered, brave, entirely hers. We don't celebrate our revenge like a trophy. We live it. Every day we choose honesty over silence. Every day we choose each other over inherited bitterness. Every day we refuse to let the people who hurt us define what family means. Because in the end, the most powerful form of revenge against toxic parents is becoming everything they told you you could never be, free, whole, and finally, at peace.